Hello friends, my name is host Eric, and in this video I'm going to do something that I think sounds interesting. I'm going to argue two sides of a controversial issue. I'm going to do each side for 3 minutes. The whole video should be about 7 minutes long. And I'm not going to say which side I agree with or not, and I'll see what you guys think if you find one set of arguments more convincing than the other. I'm going to do my best to argue both sides as well as I can. And knowing that I know the other side that I'm going to be arguing, I'm going to run framework and run some spikes as well, which is to say each of these cases is going to either spike. The first case will spike. The second case will address some of the arguments of the others, but each only gets one speech. So here we go. I'm going to start at 1 minute, and I'm going to give 3 minutes first to the pro-choice side, and then to the pro-life side of the abortion argument. You decide. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about why we should have pro-choice, indeed that abortion is an acceptable behavior and something that society, the rights towards which society ought to protect. First I'm going to talk about framework. The framework should be crypto-eudemic, which means it's going to be a combination of it's a holistic evaluatory mechanism that factors in both utilitarian and deontological perspectives. So we're going to evaluate it in the following contention level arguments. First of all, let's look at the utilitarian concerns. There's no utilitarian reason to support pro-life position because, as a matter of historical record, we know that when abortion is illegal, women pursue those abortions anyway, and it's going to cause a lot of harm to both the women and to the doctors who are willing to perform those illegal abortions and/or people who get coat hanger abortions in the dark alley. We don't want that to occur, and we know that that's a utilitarian outcome of this. Now, second, I want to talk about the rights-based arguments. I know my opponent's going to try to run some rights-based arguments. They don't apply here. First of all, I would point out that if we applied his rights-based logic, then the newborn baby that was born at full term and not aborted would have no right to food. There are no positive rights in the rights framework, so obviously that's going to be a problem. If we're going to apply that, then he's saying they have a right not to be killed while they're in the belly, but they have a right to be starved to death as soon as they're born. Makes no sense. Now, let's look again at rights by saying, note too that the only way the government can enforce this law is by violating the bodily integrity rights of the woman. Essentially, there is a body around a body. That makes it functionally impossible for the government to effect a law restricting abortion without first violating rights. Now, the whole reason we run a negative rights framework ever, or that we think is a valuable thing at all, is that it is consistent insofar as negative rights don't ever conflict with one another. The fact that these do conflict, apparently, is proof positive that the fetus, the embryo, has no natural right to life or anything else until it's a born human being. So that's his rights argument is going to break down right there, and there's no way he can possibly recover from it. His rights argument is doomed. Instead, prioritize the utilitarian calculi that I present, and also prioritize my last argument here, which is that. Oh, that was my last. Oh no, attachment. Right, the attachment issue. The reason why we have these sort of laws and prohibitions on murder and harming people, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and the real impacts from all of these things come from the fact that somebody loves you. So if you haven't been born yet, haven't been introduced to anybody, you have no attachments to other people, then there's no actual harms to eliminating that potential life. And that's why we need to be pro-choice, among many other reasons. Thank you. All right, that was the first case. That's the aft case. I'm going to spend 10, 15 seconds here on the bridge, and then I'm going to go into the neg case. Time starts now. And my opponent has made some interesting arguments. He has danced around the central core issue and tried to muddy the waters such that he can hide the fundamental wickedness of this behavior and promote what's essentially murder through a series of logical hop-arounds. Alright, so let's look at the actual reality of it. My opponent is faced with a proof of sorts that he just can't wrestle with. Namely, that we are looking at whether it's a zygote or an embryo or fetus or whatever you want to call it, it is indisputably the early stage of development of some kind of an organism. It is indisputably the early stage of development of some kind of an organism. So then we need merely to ask what type of organism it is, It's obviously Homo sapiens. And then we say, okay, so we've got an early stage development of a human being inside of a woman's body. What sort of rights must it have, or must it not have? So we look at our evaluatory mechanisms regardless of our framework, whether we are arguing a normative model such as deontology that talks about rights, whether we're arguing a normative model like utilitarianism, regardless, it's focusing on outcomes, regardless, we need to apply the same mechanism uniformly, or else it's just completely arbitrary. So let's look then at a deontological perspective. Do we say that individual human beings have less rights based on stage of development? So is it more okay to kill a newborn baby than a 10-year-old, than a 50-year-old, than a 70-year-old? No, absolutely not. That's not a calculus. It's not a criterion we consider in our calculus. And if we did consider it in our calculus, we live in a very immoral world where children are fair game, basically, and can be preyed upon in whatever fashion people want to, and it be considered perfectly ethically sound. We don't want to live in that world, so obviously we don't consider stage development a viable way to adjudicate the existence of a given right, especially a negative right. So now let's talk about the next question. Now that we've established that it's not on early stage development, well, there are a couple other possible criteria. They might say, well, it's capacity to reason, capacity for moral judgment, etc., etc., etc. Well, newborn babies don't have any of those either. People in comas don't have any of those. People try to make the claim that, for example, abortion results in is acceptable because the individual inside the body cannot live outside of the body. But if in fact that were a criterion, then people with an iron lung who had polio back in the day would have forfeited their natural rights by not being able to survive without medical assistance. So these reasons don't make any sense. There's no possible justification, no possible normative system that consistently produces they can be counted to mean anything. It also produces the result that abortion is okay, and therefore we must negate this resolution, because abortion violates the natural rights of human beings, period.